All right, you are live.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Government Operations Committee. It's Monday, September 15th. It is 6:38. And on the voting members of this committee, Councilor Beck, Councilor Dean, Councilor Mallon, Councilor Tremble, and I am Sue Hollis, the council. No, not. No. Sue Hollis, the chair of this committee. So we'll work through this agenda, hopefully expeditiously. We have a few items on here. The first one is an order authorizing the Parks and Recreation Department to partner with Bangor Rotary. And I see Tracy coming to the table. Stumbling in.
Tracy Willett, Director of Parks and Recreation. The Bangor Rotary approached us some time ago about some potential projects they could partner with us on as part of their ongoing commitment to community and service to community. Using our master plan, we zeroed in on the Candaska Extreme Trail, which seemed to be of interest to them. And we've already completed or in the process of completing a couple projects down there currently. This particular effort would focus on signage and improving the signage along the trail, as well as creating a trailhead type of entry at Gateway Park down on 14th Street. The Rotary is going to commit both volunteers and funds to the effort. And so we'd like to work with Rotary on that project.
Comments? Questions?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there is no objection, this will go to council.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's my way out. I used to 20 years ago. I know.
Item is a recommendation from the advisory committee.
Yes.
City manager.
Courtney O'Donnell, Assistant City Manager. This is a recommendation that was brought forward by the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights, and coming to the table is Chair Katie Bryden and Vice Chair Shane Boyes. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Oh, good. And so the committee met, and of course, Council Liaison, Mike Beck was also at this meeting. And so actually I'm going to turn it over, if that's okay, to Katie and Shane to kind of give an overview of their recommendation.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we are here to chat about this proposal to make a resolution, a statement, whatever the language we want to use is, to officially, as the City of Bangor, opt out of any future 287G agreements. So the 287G agreements are when we basically deputize our police officers to work with ICE. And if we opt in, then it gives ICE out control of the Bangor Police Department. If we opt out, we're just simply saying we are not interested in that. We are still very interested in supporting anything, additionally that is mutually beneficial and collaborative from Homeland Security, working, in a way that benefits our entire city. It's just with, as I'm sure everyone is aware, increased ICE presence and stories. And there's so much fear in the community right now from individuals that are seeing their friends and neighbors disappear in Bangor, in greater Maine. And if there's anything we as a committee wanted to do to simply say that this is not something that we would support. I don't know how much background folks have, and I'm happy to share more, but is that okay if I just really quickly give this was up on Governor Mills' desk last year to be a statewide decision that no city in Maine would opt into 287G. She did not sign it. It's still sitting on her desk come January when legislation opens or legislators return. She has 3 days to either say, yep, the whole state's out, or say nothing and it goes into law, or vetoes it. So we are waiting on that. January feels very far away right now. Can't believe it's September. It does feel far away, and it feels far away for folks that are every single day wondering, like, you know, am I safe to drop my kid off at school? Am I safe to run to the grocery store? And we have been talking a lot about this since even before we didn't know it was going to go through Janet Mills' office or not. As a city, it seems like a really easy win to simply say that we are going to do what is best for every citizen here to make sure that you feel safe. There's plenty of data points that I'm happy to share, bless you, about, you know, actually increase in police cooperation and benefits to the city when they opt out or put a restriction on a 287G agreement. We had drafted something as a committee, and that was like we were joking, it's like when you ask for a raise and you just like throw everything out with the understanding that it's going to come back. There are going to be some elements that are non-negotiable. And we are obviously here to open that conversation. We just thought it would be easier to have a very sticky wall to go through with you all rather than just say, hey, can we make up some language that says no? Instead, just having some language that could even be as simple as, you know, we are invested in a mutually collaborative opportunity to cooperate with federal authorities, but we are as a city choosing to opt out of 287G. Hard stop, that could be it. So that's where we're at.
Councilor Dean?
In the past, I believe that Police Chief Hathaway had stated that they were not participating in this and didn't feel a written agreement was necessary. Has there been any more collaboration with him or any discussion as to how he feels and the department feels about this?
A great question. There has not been conversation with Chief Hathaway. And that is something that I'd be more than willing to have. Can I just say that while I fully agree, and it's definitely not in any way our purview to say what any department should be doing, there's a lot of agreements that are made, you know, and things that are put into effect that there's not a reason for, like, unless you're thinking about everyone. Like, we don't have to have Braille on doors until we did with the ADA, right? Like, we don't have to make decisions that really take everyone into account if there's not enough complaining. And right now we're not hearing a lot of complaints because people are scared. And again, I haven't talked to Chief Hathaway, and I fully respect his department, and I'm never going to say we should do this because he's the authority in that. And obviously everyone that works for the police department is, but we think that this is honestly an easy win. Just to be able to be on the forefront of making a stand and saying a positive thing for every citizen of Bangor. But I do think that's a good idea, and I would love to have that conversation. Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Fish?
I don't feel, I don't have a vote, but I don't feel that we should be in the habit of making decisions that affect the police department. In my understanding, they haven't had a problem, and I think we could potentially risk some funding. Money's coming in, perhaps risk certain data and collaboration that we have now that's beneficial. And I don't know really if it's kind of not broke, why fix it. And if it's a problem, we can always come back and readdress it. But from what I understand, it's not a problem. And I don't see why we should make a decision because everybody else is doing it out of fear of something that might happen. I think we should stay open-minded. If we see it's a problem, bring it back. But I think not opting in or opting out, we leave it to our police department. So far, I think they have a decent relationship that I've not heard a problem with. So that's my thoughts.
Councilor Trevor?
Yeah, I really appreciate work committee. I totally understand where the committee is coming from. I have concerns, and I think we need to hear from the police department. We need to hear from the solicitor if there's any unintended consequences about doing something. And I'm comfortable waiting with it to see what happens at the state level. I mean, the governor is a former attorney general. She was a legislator. I think she probably feels the same way we do about the way ICE is behaving across the country right now. It's not the traditional way that ICE has conducted their business, and it's not, I think, what most of us would like to see in this country. So that being said, I'm also concerned. I know the city had no intention, just because we don't tend to enter one of these. But by having this, I'm afraid it could put a, a target on a back and all of a sudden, why is the city doing this? So I'd like to find out more about what the police department feels, if there's unintended consequences by doing this. If we could put a statement out to support people that have any fears, but maybe come short of saying we're not going to do it. I don't believe we are, but by saying we're not going to do it, I think just puts a target on it. I just want to get more information.
I do believe the city solicitor is prepared to speak to this topic tonight if the committee wishes.
You want to hear from him now?
Sure.
Yeah, so,
Come on down.
You didn't have the same enthusiasm.
No,
Really missing that, like, really need the name tag. Sorry, we took the chair.
So. As was already mentioned, the city, we appreciate the mission of the committee, and you have your mission, and I'm the attorney for the city, so I have to consider all kinds of considerations on a matter like this. And as was mentioned, we have not entered into any 287G agreements, nor has there ever been any kind of intent to do so. The resolve that was proposed was a specific resolve, and I looked at it, and I did some research, and I also checked with Maine Municipal Association's legal department to look at some issues. And there were like 3 different things that I want to mention with the proposed resolve. The first one is a well-established legal principle that a legislative body cannot bind a future legislative body. So the resolve is drafted as a binding obligation that stands regardless of the current or future status of state or federal legislation. And so my point is that this resolve can't bind a future council, so it will actually have no legal effect. But that does lead to the second point I wanted to make, is that it could have an effect, and that the effect would be putting a target on the city's back. Again, the city's never entered any of those agreements, those 287G agreements, nor has there been any suggestion that there was an intent to do so. But the resolve won't change anything the city is doing, but what it would likely result in, and from my perspective as the city's attorney, is inviting the federal authorities to reconsider providing federal funding for our airport, perhaps our public health department, our connector of our bus service. The airport especially seeks and relies on federal funding for a number of important projects to be competitive. And I think passing this resolve would result in putting in jeopardy all of the programs and projects at the airport and public health that rely on the federal funding. The third kind of issue I wanted to identify was the resolve as written also contains statements of facts, statements of factual matters that I don't know that multiple members of the council would feel are actually matters of opinion. So that is the resolve as written. I would not recommend that the city would pass. The most important reason being the second one, but the first one ties in, and that it would have no legal effect. You can't bind a future council with a resolve of a present council. But it could have a lot of negative consequences, so that I would recommend that the proposed resolve not be passed as written.
Council Beck?
Just a question, what about a legislative policy directive as prescribed by Chapter 9, Section 18?
A legislative policy directive.
Yeah. get approach. Okay, at the bottom of this page here, 918.
I mean, if there is to be another proposal or suggestion, I would of course look at it. But that's not what this is. This is a proposed resolve. It's specific in nature. So I was just I would react to a policy directive under 918 if it arises.
Council Trimble?
When you talk to Maine municipal, are there any other cities in Maine that have passed this?
I did not talk with the legal department about that issue. I talked to them about this particular, the legal ramifications of, but MMA's legal department was in agreement that that they wouldn't recommend that this be passed for the reasons that I mentioned.
Thank you, Solicitor, for that very much. And I think that we knew that, right? Like, and not to say that we purposely wasted your time. I truly don't mean that. I mean that this is like pie in the sky. I still would love the opportunity to, the thing is we need feedback from all of you. Like, should we, consider changing this, making elements of it that could be better received, where we would have more opportunities to at least be able to say, out loud, as a city, that we are doing everything in our power to ensure everyone is safe. Because obviously you're an expert and this is your job. So I'm not in any way saying that I know more but in the research that I did, there were so many more cities that actually lost money from the federal because they were barred by federal courts when Trump's administration went in and said, we're cutting off these federal funds for your airport or your municipality. A federal court would block that, and then they would be locked up in this legal battle. So funds would inevitably be lost more from saying that we would, opt in, or that we would say, or, there's this protection from federal courts, if that makes sense.
I'm not quite following. There aren't any agreements. That resolve wouldn't have any legal effect. And yet it would probably have a political effect, in my opinion. That would result in problems for our airport especially.
Council Forney?
I'd have to agree with the city solicitor on his recommendations, although I'm still open to hear more information, and we get that from the chief. I think that would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
He was here earlier.
Yeah. We saw him when we came in, but
And beyond that, it's Councilor Trumbull's point. I don't want to target on Bangor back. If we move in that direction, if it's going to be in that direction, I'll let the governor, which is way above my grade, even though she's always paid governor, make that decision. But I don't think it should be done here.
You may.
We were thinking this was kind of a starting point for a conversation, in terms of kind of getting these concerns and feedback and desires from council, and expected that we would, if there was interest, come back at the next GovOps meeting in early October. I think it's October 6th, with additional information. We'll make sure the police chief's here. And so if there's anything else that you guys would like information on or consideration or anything like that, this is really helpful for staff in particular, but certainly the committee to hear as well.
Council Beck?
Just want to get my feedback. I certainly understand the concern of previous speakers about the target on Bangor's back. But I guess I'm more concerned right now about the target on the backs of minorities who live here. 287G agreements, while there's no stipulation that if you don't sign one, you miss out on federal funding. I understand the situation. We just had our CDBG action plan kicked back because it had the word equity in it. So I understand the political reality right now. But I also, my concern is we capitulate on this. What's next? Quotas? Don't get funding unless you make 10 arrests a week, 50 arrests a week. I mean, if we're arguing potentials here, I mean, there's a lot of potentials. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation continue.
Other comments? Councilor Dean.
Resolves like this always make me a little bit uncomfortable because the intention is honorable. And I don't want to diminish that, but like we have mentioned, I think if we had some input from Chief Hathaway.
Absolutely.
And perhaps some different language, I would certainly be agreeable to listening to something.
Yeah, thank you. May I? I first of all, very much appreciate everyone just hearing this, hearing where we're at. And could I like potentially have the solicitor come to our future, racial equity, inclusion and human rights committee meetings? This is also very helpful in terms of just knowing what would be passed or not passed by the state of Maine, or, what would be recommended by council. Because at the end of the day, to Councilor Beck's point, there's a lot of fear in what if, and it feels weird to say we're trying our best to prevent what ifs by presenting another fear of what ifs. So it does feel a little bit cyclical and caught in that way. And we can all, there's plenty of data in the world that can demonstrate what other cities do. Bangor is unique in and of itself. And so if we have any opportunity that we can to, I think, get ahead of this in any way that makes it so that there is that safety and belonging and everything that our committee is working for, that would be, I think, a real gift. And so we really appreciate your time. And these conversations are so important. And so thank you for all of this. And thank you so much for your research and feedback too. So solicitor, I appreciate that.
And just real quick, that actually is good timing because the committee meets again before the next GovOps meeting. So.
Wonderful. I believe Shane had a
Yeah, I haven't talked during this, so I just wanted to chime in real quick. Just a little anecdote to illustrate why something like this is important. So personally, the other day, I was driving through the city and was at a stoplight. There was a Bangor Police Department car, a couple cars back. He came up and around and then cut in front of a couple other cars, made a traffic stop. As soon as they had pulled off to the side of the road, 2 or 3 unmarked cars that were clearly not Bangor PD law enforcement cars all pulled over. People jumped out, threw on police vests. They were not Bangor PD. They were just plain beige police vests, right on Hogan Road in Bangor. And so for me, my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, that's ICE. Because I know that there have been raids in the city and that there has been a presence. And in my mind, I said, but why would Bangor PD have initiated the stop? Who were those people in the unmarked cars with nondescript police uniforms? And so when people who live in the city see that, they say, what is going on? And if we have a statement that says Bangor will not participate in this type of enforcement or this type of behavior, that makes people feel safe. If I knew that we had an agreement like that, I would say, oh, well, it was probably the DEA or probably another agency that we want to be actively enforcing the laws, right? But in that moment, when I drove by and saw that it was an out-of-state vehicle with 3 Hispanic men inside, immediately I thought, Bangor PD is working with ICE. And I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure, but I would hope that that's not the case. But for other people in the city that saw that, it's concerning.
Councilor Fish.
I do know that there's been a lot of serious illegal drug activity in Bangor, and there's a lot of undercover people as well. And with all the opioid crises and substance use addiction we have, and Bangor is unique that, for the population we have 4 methadone clinics and a number of services. So we have the gangs and the drug dealers here, and it's sort of like a dog chasing its tail, sort of say. So I do think that there's a lot of undercover activity when we go by. I've seen it on my street as well and thought, what's going on there? So I think we can't always assume when the police are doing their job and working with other departments that we need that advice.
So,
I would just echo that. I mean, there's DEA, there's APF. You can list the alphabet. I don't want to jump into those conclusions. I think that's somewhat irresponsible. But I get it. I understand what you're saying.
I would just add that that's, I think, a natural response given the culture and the climate in our country right now. We've seen reports coming out of that exact behavior happening all across the country. People in unmarked, typically if it's DEA enforcement, it will say drug enforcement, DEA, something like that. It literally was just like you could buy it off of Amazon Police.
Yeah, I think
So
at the
that's
end of the day,
yours.
it's just, I think the point is, right, that if we had this agreement, then people would say like, there wouldn't be this wondering and these assumptions. And then when people assume, everything starts to get chaotic and scary and fearful. And so whatever we can do to say as a city, this is what we're collectively working towards. And that's like one of the great things about 287G is it's not Homeland Security. It doesn't say that we're not going to help collaboratively. It's just helping with, or rather prohibiting immigration.
okay, thank you. So I think I'm hearing that you want more information. You'd like to see this come back to another GovOps meeting. Was that the consensus around the table? Okay. And you said they do meet again before we have another one. All right. Okay.
Thank you for that
Thank you.
opportunity. And thanks for the opportunity to return. You guys are here a lot, so thank you. Over very long, never ending time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so. Right. We have some public health update and related items. The first one is authorizing the city manager for grant.
Actually, the first one is the true public health update. And the reason why I actually put that first is because I think a lot of what she has to share will kind of bleed into those orders that come
Oh, I see. I thought
after.
that was just
So
sort of a-
I'll ask Jennifer to come to the table.
Good evening, everyone. Jen Gunnerman, Director of Bangor Public Health and Community Services. And I'm actually totally embarrassed right now because I shut down my computer. I forgot that I was not done for the evening. So if I could just see the memo, I could kind of breeze through it. Thank you. So HIV outbreak, just a quick update. We're still at 28 reported cases. Again, the keywords reported. We've seen a lot of, as I've mentioned, testing fatigue. So we're trying to work with our community partners to see how we can get over that. Federal CDC was here about a month or so ago and met with a lot of the community partners about some of the challenges, some of the strengths, some of the opportunities. That report was provided to Maine CDC. There were a couple of models they recommended based upon our feedback, what they'd seen in other states in the US. So we're going to be meeting again with Federal CDC to see get more recommendations on implementation. Intensive case management. So this was the program or is the program that's funded by Bangor's opiate settlement funds. I can report today that we have filled both case manager positions. One of the people who are taking a position is actually currently works at Bangor Public Health. She's a licensed clinical social worker. She has helped work on the users union. She is working in an SSP right now. She's got some great connections with the community. And then the other person that we've hired is coming out of state from Vermont, so understands winter, whose background is almost completely in HIV outside of time working actually active in the US Army. And he actually has a number of years of experience in HIV case management. So we feel very fortunate that we'll have that experience coming to us. An RFP is going out for the vehicle lease. We have secured our clinical oversight, which is one of the MOUs that you have in front of you this evening. Someone who's been working in this community for a while, not only as a case manager for many years, but also providing that clinical oversight. That person will do about 4 hours of clinical oversight a week. That is in alignment with what's expected for main care. So when we get to that point of main care billing, that will already be in place. In addition, I just heard from Franny Peabody the end of last week. They went for a MEHAF grant to provide us basically funding so that they could use staff time to train our case managers and help us build the main care billing system. They received that grant, and I spoke with Katie Rutherford this morning. We've already started to set up the plan for that technical assistance. We're hoping to enroll the week of October 6th. There's plenty of people that I've already spoken to as part of the outbreak who is excited to see that service starting. Mosquito-borne disease. So there was a health alert sent out by Maine CDC about a week or so ago that put Penobscot County at severe risk for Eastern equine encephalitis called Triple E. That is a mosquito-borne disease. Maine has been seeing an increase in the number of mosquito-borne diseases over the past few years. Based upon that information, we contacted all the city departments, we contacted the school, let them know that we've got materials that can be sent out to families and customers, people who use our services. We also had social media posts go up about protecting yourself against mosquitoes. I spoke with Chuck, who leads the vector-borne lab out of Maine Medical Center, who has the people who do the mosquito traps up in our area with the University of Maine. He actually said that mosquito season is winding down. Colder temperatures bring slower mosquitoes. The dry weather doesn't have those standing pools of water that we'd expect. So he is optimistic that we are not going to see much more in the way of mosquito-borne disease. Can't make any promises, but we remain vigilant and we have educational materials available for anybody who wants them. Accreditation, I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. We are working still on our strategic planning process. We should have that finished up by October. I do want to let you know that this is one of the activities that may have to go to the side as we deal with a number of other issues right now. I think that we've done some of the most important work in accreditation, being our community health assessment, our community health improvement plan, and strategic planning. Those are 3 things that can help us do our work regardless of accreditation. We're also looking at our performance management, which is a piece of accreditation, but important to the quality of our work. So we will continue to work on pieces that are important for running a stellar local health department. The process itself might need to go on hold until we can sort of weather some choppy storms right now. Maternal Child Health Public Health Nursing Grant. City Manager Lear and I met with the governor and other representatives from Maine DHHS about the Maternal Child Health Grant. We are probably not going to see any changes there. So right now we are working with Maine CDC. They had told us that they are going to increase our funding from one of our grants so that we are able to keep public health nurses to do other maternal and child health work. That has not come to fruition yet. We're hopeful after a conversation on Wednesday that we'll know exactly what additional funding will be. We'll keep you.
So like they're telling for 2 years.
We have what's called STIG funding, Public Health Infrastructure Grant. That's funding that has been promptly. We've had that money for a number of years. Maine CDC gets that grant from the federal government. We've been promised funds until 2027, and this is money we've been using for a number of years. We were told that we were going to receive additional funds in that grant to pay for the 2 public health nurses. We're still in discussions with CDC. Hope to know more on Wednesday. And that goes to the Public Health Infrastructure Grant. So one of the resolves that you have in front of you is so that we can move very quickly when we get that increased amount of infrastructure grant funds. The contract for that grant starts October 1st. Because I don't know today what that increased amount will be, that's why there's not a specific amount, but an up to amount in that result. So that can happen pretty quickly. I know there's one more item. Oh, two more. General assistance. So just to also let you know that the general assistance maximum rates increased. That's a decision that's outside of us. That is a statewide increase. It increased pretty significantly. For example, the 1-bedroom unheated maximum increased from $898 to $1,043. So that is guidance that we use on how we allocate and support general assistance. The city budget, how it's built now, is based upon our current rates. So we, can expect a little bit of potentially an increase in those costs. There is a letter that every year the city council signs, at least a representation of city council signs, to say that we know that there's been an increase, and City Manager Lear has that form for you all to sign. And then the last thing that I'll just mention is federal changes. So Congress is going to be back in session super soon to work on the federal budget. We are watching this very closely. We have seen already indications that eligibility is going to change for some grants, policy alignment with certain federal policies are going to be required. And so we are sort of waiting anxiously to see what the federal budget will look like. The one other order that you have in front of you is the community paramedicine order that Chief Lowe and I spoke to you about, I think, was it just a week ago? And so that is also in front of you for your approval. And I think I've hit it all.
Okay. Questions? That's okay.
A question, but just a comment of just how quickly the advisory committee on the opioid settlement funds worked, and then how quickly you put the money to work. I mean, September 15th, you've already hired both folks, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, an outbreak. It need all hands on deck. So I mean, if it didn't break the quorum, I would say give you a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, we do have 3 orders and a resolve related to this. I don't know if you want to take them one at a time or all at once. It's up to you.
They look pretty straightforward. Why don't we just run down through them? So the first one was authorizing the city manager to apply for a grant with the state of Maine not to exceed $400,000 to support housing stability. Even option? Well, yes,
Collectively or individually?
It's up to you.
Yeah.
You can do it either way.
we have 3 orders and a resolve.
If you want to read them all, you could make a motion on.
Okay. Hold on. Order is authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of agreement with Karen Gardner, LCSW, to provide clinical oversight for the intensive care manager program. The resolve, accepting and appropriating up to an additional $730,000 in grant funds from Maine Department of Health and Human Services to fund Bangor Public Health and Community Services for strengthening public health infrastructure. The last order is to authorize the city manager to apply for a Cole Foundation grant for $243,225 to support community paramedicine program.
I'll make a motion on the 3 orders and the 1 resolve.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Any objection? Seeing none, they'll have passage. And then it says discussion of the community pair medicine program.
Oh,
think
yeah,
that-
I think unless it was just an opportunity in case there were any outstanding questions, I think from the last discussion, which it doesn't sound like it was one.
I think we were pretty.
Yeah.
All right with that. Okay, great. So our last item is the community connector service update.
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows, hopefully everyone knows at this point, we did have to make the tough decision to further reduce community connector service. Unfortunately, on paper, it looks like we still have adequate drivers. But unfortunately, we have 5 folks out on medical leave. A couple folks left more recently, and we have actually 6 drivers that have helped us when they can, but only work 1 or 2 shifts a week for various reasons. And so we currently have 20 drivers for the transit, the fixed stop side, and 6 for the ADA paratransit. And just to put that into perspective, before we further reduce service, we have 26 shifts a day. And by reducing the service, it went down to 22, which means we still have minimally 2 open shifts every day that have to be filled. And even reducing it last Monday, we still had 6 doubles last Friday. Because people, you know, if they're sick, they still got to call out. They may have had pre-approved vacation plans. And so this has been, as everybody knows, kind of a struggle that's come and gone since the pandemic. Unfortunately, we're not alone. There's a lot of factors that go into this. And we have offered nearly continuous classes, either for the CDL with the P or folks coming to us with their CDL to get their passenger endorsement, which is required. And in fact, we have 4 people in a class right now. The problem is that every one of those classes take time. Just if you already have your CDL and you're getting your P endorsement, for example, that's a 2-month process. It's even longer if you need your CDL to begin with. And while we have a good retention rate for folks that go through that class for Community Connector, the reality is sometimes people get in that bus and realize that driving a ginormous 30+ foot bus through constant traffic is not for them. In addition to needing to be customer service focused, it's just essentially it's a very different driving a transit bus and a school bus than it is like a dump truck or some other sort of job that requires a CDL. And so our direct competition is in fact schools, because in order to drive a school bus, you have to have a passenger endorsement and also a school bus endorsement. And that's really our only, the only folks that could come to us either came from away or back in the day, a lot of folks may remember that you could go to local tech schools and get your CDL pretty easily. And back then they give you like all the endorsements. And now you have to go through the days being able to study in a book and ask for a test are long gone. You have to prove that you were in a classroom, that you have road and range experience, and then go through the testing process. You add on top of that factors like recreational marijuana access and other factors. And unfortunately, our pool is quite limited. And like I said, we're not alone. And to be frank, I think our goal is always to offer full quality service. But I do think that as we move along, that's going to become harder and harder. And so I think you will see during the budget process another request put forward to at least make some portion of the drivers' positions full-time. And next year their contract will be up, and so we will be back at the table negotiating. And so unfortunately, when our direct competitors are offering dollars more an hour, the reality is I think all of this compounding together has created this fluctuation, if you will, of the service, despite truly our best efforts. We are doing everything that we can internally to help with recruitment and retention and training. And I want to believe that we'll get there. And with your help, I think in the long run we will. And so that's my spiel.
Okay. Questions, Councilor Trump?
Well, just to follow up on what you said, we're not in this alone, we're not. But I know our competition is the school systems and school buses, but there must be other bus systems this size across the country. Do we look at other systems and how they're able to get, anybody doing anything unique around the country? Is an association that you can get a monthly newsletter and say, here's the best practice? Yeah.
I will say that our longtime transit administrator, Lori Lynn Scott, is very well plugged into all of that nationally, and she's yet to come across anything that seemed like it could be, you know, maybe even like a bronze bullet would have been nice, but unfortunately, no. But certainly we do keep an eye out for all of that. You know, with the hope that it might turn around. So yeah, I think another aspect too that I think we should be advocating for our city, for example, is also to in terms of supporting those schools that offer CDL. So for example, Eastern Maine Community College used to have a CDL program, it's gone. Getting instructors, in fact, multiple times when we held a CDL class for folks to actually get their CDL, we would also hold training classes for train the trainer, because folks that are willing and able to teach those classes are also really hard to find in Maine. And so it really is kind of, I think, a multi-layered issue. And again, we're trying our part in terms of addressing it. But it's, you know, our area geographically, I think, is also a bit of a struggle. Whereas in Southern Maine, I think, you know, you have a larger applicant pool, you just do naturally than up here. But I think, you know, hopefully a multi-pronged approach will eventually get us to a place where not only where we could restore full service, but actually have a true conversation about the future of that service and the investment that the city and our partners are willing to put into that in order to do things like expanded service and things to increase ridership. And as Dave Subject, the city solicitor, mentioned earlier, the Community Connector is heavily funded, and it is true that across the country, public transportation is heavily subsidized. And so I think that we're very fortunate to have this bus system here. And I certainly believe that we have made great strides in recent years to invest in that system in a lot of different ways, but the work's not done yet, really.
Councilor Dean.
Would there be any benefit to having like a CDL class that's open to more than just the drivers that we need, opening up to different industries that maybe we could bring in some revenue and bring in a bigger population that might be interested in our services?
That's interesting. Off the top of my head, you know, that is something that we have had, I think, some informal conversations with like Eastern Maine Community College in terms of how we can support them to do that. From our perspective, our goal is always our needs as a city, but we have done some level of partnership where it makes sense to help bolster that. But really, we're not set up to be that sort of catalyst for the area. We would really need to lean on and partner with like the community college, for example, because the amount of resources, both time and cost-wise, to hold those classes is very significant. And the trouble is, Community Connector is kind of unique because most of the time when folks are coming to us wanting to go through our CDL program for Community Connector, they're excited to drive a bus, right? Like they're attracted to the idea of driving transit in general. So I think that lends itself to the retention rate. However, our Public Works Department, for example, has held many more CDL classes than the Community Connector. And we do see lots of folks after they're fully licensed, they find other more higher paying jobs because those businesses and things are not offering that opportunity to individuals. And it's unfortunate, and you know, we've tried contracts and all that stuff, but enforcing it actually costs more than to just try to replace that person. And so we, not to get too far off topic, but Public Works, you may remember a while ago, was down double digits, and we clawed our way back. We were close to fully staffed. Well, we're back down to missing seven. And so I don't know I don't really know what the answer is. I think we want to be a part of the solution. But given how strapped and limited our resources are as a whole, I'm not sure we could be that sort of driving force at this point, but we would certainly want to support, I think, others that are willing to step up in that way. And just a little bit of history, when the PHMSA, it's the PHMSA rule, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Administration, I think, put out their rules for the licensing that made it harder to actually get your license. There was a long lead up for that. And I think it was 2022, if I recall correctly, where it actually went into effect. And of course, I was relatively new to the city. We were already struggling in terms of the drivers and things. And I kind of reached out to a bunch of agencies and other communities and stuff, trying to put them on blast, like, hey, do you know this is coming down the pike? This is not just going to affect Bangor, it's going to affect small communities, businesses that need CDL drivers, but don't have the systems in place to actually educate folks off the street that are interested in going in that field, especially when there has been a huge trend in terms of people giving up their CDL in order to participate, for example, into recreational marijuana, because THC is still federally illegal. And so it is tested, even though there's no way of knowing whether or not an individual happened to ingest that weeks ago or if they are actively high in the moment. And so without that sort of being addressed, I was like, hey, surely there's interest in kind of collaborating and getting something off the ground. And it went nowhere. Everybody was like, oh, the state, somebody else is going to step in. And since then, it's just become a larger and larger struggle. And just for a little, NTI right now is one of the few schools in the area where you can still get your CDL. And that costs thousands of dollars to go through that. And so naturally us offering paid training to get your CDL is very attractive. But again, you can then take that anywhere and make, dollars more an hour. So it's a struggle. I think we're doing the right thing. I think we have no choice but to continue to offer those classes. But I think we'll continue to kind of figure out how to evolve that and hopefully continue to work with our staff and the and council and the unions to help create strategies to recruit and retain drivers.
Other comments? Councilor Beck.
First of all, I would say, if we're all hearing from folks who were affected by the cuts and unhappy, but, really, it could be worse. I mean, the fact that the staff is working so hard with what they have, to keep those delays and service changes to a minimum. Again, it may not feel like if you're one of the people on the road that got changed, but it could be worse. But I do appreciate you bringing up wages. I mean, it's just a reality. And that's a conversation I hope we can have as a council about how do we, make ourselves more competitive, because it's such an important service that so many people rely on.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say that I don't want to not give a nod, an apology to those riders that really heavily rely on our bus and have found themselves having to wait an extra half hour for that bus to come around on the affected routes. That definitely makes a huge difference to a lot of people as to whether or not they're going to get where they need to go in time. And so especially even if you back that up earlier in the morning, it's still a struggle for many people. And nobody feels that impact more than our drivers, the dispatchers, and the folks working so hard to keep this transit system operating in our area. And so we really do feel it personally as well, in terms of we hear the feedback that's coming in. We understand people are upset, we get it, but we truly are doing the best that we can with what we have.
It's true. You're doing it well.
Thank you.
Any other comments for Courtney? Do we have any further business?